I wanted to ask if you do virtual visits online, or do you have to be a resident of the state of Texas?
That's a good question. So the answer is yes, we do. However, the state of Texas require that you have at least one inpatient visit. So people see us, they'll come, fly to Houston, see us once. Then once you've established that, you're a patient. And then we have a digital health program. In fact, even people who live in Houston, whether you're across the street or across town or wherever, we do digital visits with patients from anywhere and everywhere. But the answer is yes. If you, as a new patient, we ask you to come in for one visit in person and then establish that, and then we follow you remotely from that point on.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Thanks very much for that, Dr. Montgomery. And up next, we have Stephanie. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, Dr. Montgomery. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Love your work.
Thank you.
I'm someone who has a high blood pressure and tachycardia. I'm trying to heal with a plant-based diet, but I've only been doing it since January. So I'm kind of like still in the throes of trying to reverse some of my conditions nutritionally. Mm-hmm. And in a couple of weeks, I am donating bone marrow to my father through apheresis. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, being a heart patient, is there anything that I should do before and or after recovery to make it better? Because I'm a little nervous about them doing so much with my blood and possible clotting and different stuff. So, anything you can help me with on that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, no, thank you for the question. First, you want to make sure, and typically they have pretty good screening processes before they let you be a donor for anything. I mean, even people that are just doing a simple blood donation undergo a basic screening process. So just make sure you meet with your primary care doctor and they're aware of it and go through a screening process because they want to look at your medications. There's certain things they look at in your blood work. And I would imagine before you undergo a bone marrow biopsy, they're going to do some pretty good screening stuff. I think you're doing right to, work to improve your nutrition status and your health, and whatever you do along those lines, it's going to, be a positive for you. But my advice would just, stick with your primary care physicians. Obviously, the doctors that are coordinating the bone marrow biopsy or bone marrow donation are going to do the proper screening. And so that's, they have protocols in place that I think is going to be very beneficial for you.
Thanks. Excellent, doctor. And now we're going to bring in Maria. Hi, Maria.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Montgomery. I wanted to know your thoughts on chelation therapy for improving circulation and I guess lowering blood pressure, and your thoughts on, I usually take olive oil before this conference. I usually take a tablespoon of olive oil every day, and your thoughts on the oils and chelation therapy.
Chelation therapy is a 2B indication for treating patients with coronary disease and angina. So it's along with ECP therapy. We use a lot of ECP therapy, what's called external counterpulsation, which is another non-invasive way of treating coronary disease. And chelation therapy has data that makes it a 2B indication. So there is data supporting chelation in people with coronary disease and angina. And we don't use chelation, don't do chelation. So I don't have personal experience with it, but there is data supporting it. And then there's also data supporting chelation, removing certain toxins. And I think third-party payers will cover it in some situations, particularly with lead and some other toxic metals that can be effectively treated with chelation. But chelation, yeah, there's some benefit, and it's actually made it to the indications guidelines by the ACC/AHA. Oils, I don't advocate the use of extracted oils. Oils are problematic for a number of reasons. You want to consume whole foods, the whole fat foods. So if you, instead of the olive oil, eat the olive, get a good source of a, unpasteurized olive and consume that. Seeds, raw, in fact, I recommend all high fat foods be in their raw state. So I don't even recommend roasting seeds or roasting nuts or anything like that. I'd say they should be consumed raw and unsalted, raw, unseasoned, but it's consume those high fat foods in their natural state. When you extract an oil from its, plant of any source, it becomes rancid probably almost immediately, maybe due to the extracting process or due to the poor storage. And so there are a lot of problems with oils, even though you may have these first cold press oils. Now that some people advocate them, and again, that's why we are advocating doing the science and looking at the biochemistry, because maybe you can look at a group of people with raw plant-based diets with oil and raw plant-based diets without oil and measure the biochemistry and see what's going on. And so that may be the way to solve this question, but right now we don't recommend it.
Thanks very much for that, Dr. Montgomery. And let's go ahead now to Isabel. Welcome, Isabel.
Hi, thank you. Doctor, I want to ask you a question regarding my father. Now, I'm living in New Zealand, my father is in France, so it's a bit difficult. But he's 84 years old, and he's taking 3 medications. One is it's aspirin, one is for high blood pressure, and one is for prostate. Now, 5 weeks ago, approximately, he's out of the blue, his leg swollen. He had a strong pain, and he doesn't feel his toes. And he went to see the doctor, and the doctor said, oh, you must have a virus, and they gave him some antibiotics, but the antibiotics didn't do anything. So I just want to know, he suffered from his knees for many, many years. So it's like anti-inflammatory for that.
Yeah. So, again, it's hard to make a diagnosis remotely, but a swollen leg with pain, you worry about with poor circulation or blood clot or something like that. If the antibiotic doesn't work, obviously he wants to go back to the doctor and get follow-up assessment, because, sometimes a tincture of time gives you, a lot of information. So if the swelling is not getting better, or if the pain is not getting better, then he may need to do some imaging studies, but certainly he wants to follow up with his physician, especially given that symptoms have not subsided with the antibiotics. And so, but, close follow-up with his physician, I think, would be key. He also may benefit from imaging on that leg to see what's going on.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that, doctor. And we're now going to go to, let's see, Vivian. Hi, Vivian. Hi, Vivian, are you there? Oh gosh, Vivian, I have you unmuted, but we are not hearing you at all. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to lower your hand, and if you can fix that on your end, that would be great. Come back into our list. Thanks. And so up next is, I'm going to ask Laura to unmute. Let's see if I can do that. Hi,
Can
Laura.
you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, what do you know? Oh, Dr. Montgomery, I want to move to Texas just because you're just so awesome. I want to live near you. So I had three questions. The vitamin C therapy, how much and what form of vitamin C therapy? The smoothies, what was in them and for how long? And if I'm a 67-year-old person, strong as an ox, plant-based diet, but I haven't been to a doctor in a long time. If I just want to make sure that my heart is doing everything it's supposed to be, what would be the optimal test that I should ask for?
Wow, those are great questions. Let's start with the vitamin C. It's probably the easiest. Many people use a buffered vitamin C. We use a liposomal formulation. It's really vitamin C in sort of fat, liposomal or fat envelopes. The absorption is probably a little bit better. You can get more in the system, especially these patients with acutely ill patients who probably have, gut inflammation. So anything that enhances absorption is beneficial. So the patient I mentioned was on a liposomal vitamin C. The smoothies, we had mostly greens in them. So it's mostly vegetables. We sometimes we'll use a date, or we may use an apple. So sometimes they have one fruit, but mostly have super greens in them. Some are just veggie fruity smoothies, or have beets or carrots in them. And so essentially so they have like a super green food that has lots of dehydrated broccoli, spinach, and kale, and there'll be a blue-green algae in it. So we want to get a lot of these super nutrients in high amounts. in a form that they can absorb very rapidly, very easily. And so the amount of fruit we use just helps with the palatability of it. They're sick in the hospital, and so there's some things that they're going through. So it makes it, if there's something to say, hey, I really like that, then great, they'll drink more of it. And I don't think the small amount of fruit in this situation can hurt them. We use foods that are procured locally for the most part. So that's what the smoothies are. Now, as far as the vitamin C, that in terms of the heart test, the interesting thing is this, to test your cardiovascular system, one thing is to look at your functional status. So you want to do that. So how long you can walk, or far, or well you climb, that's a good simple test, and that's important. The other aspect, so that's the physiology. The other thing you want to look at is the biochemistry. And these don't have to be very fancy tests, but you want to get something that looks at inflammation. So it may get a C-reactive protein or a CBC. Look at your white count. You want your white count to be on the low side. Lots of people like to look at lipid levels or omega-3 ratio levels. Those are also helpful. If you could look at your lipid panels, look at LP(a), see if you don't have a high amount of these atherogenic. So these are the biochemical things that you want to look at to determine. So if physiologically you do well, your heart rate and blood pressure responds well to exercise, your resting heart rate, resting blood pressure are good, that's a good sign on the physiological side. And on the biochemical side, you want to look at things like lipids and inflammatory markers. So looking at those two gives you some insight at the macro and the micro level. And obviously, we come in, we do things that are more specific, that, endothelial function and so on. But if you do those basic things, plus you're eating a plant-based diet, you should be okay as long as you follow those.